Hello and welcome to lesson 2 of week 8. In this lesson, we are going to look at inheritance. My name is Mildred. Now, inheritance is the process by which one class takes attributes and methods of another class. Now, when this happens, the class from which it inherits from is the parent class, and the new class, the class that is inheriting, is the child class. Let's try to create something realistic. For instance, let's say we want to create an app for a hotel, and this hotel we know will have guests coming in. These guests will stay in rooms. We'll have rooms, and these rooms will have different types of rooms: single rooms, double room, family room, or different categories of rooms. And we want to create a file with different classes so that we'll have inheritance happening. The first thing we want to do, let's try to create the hotel class first. So let's say class hotel. Now this is not well thought through, so we're going to create as we go along. The first thing we want to have here is the init method, and for this hotel we want to have just the name of the hotel. So we'll say self name, and then we'll say self dot name is equal to name. Now we want to define another attribute, which is the rooms. So self dot rooms is equal to, I'll make it the rooms, a list of rooms. We don't have the rooms as a parameter. We just want to have an empty list if no room is defined, and if the rooms are defined, we want to define them using another class. You create a method, and what we want to do is to have a method that we can use to add a room. So let's make a plan. We want to have a guest, right? We want every guest to have the name, age, their passport number. We want to have room. We want room to have a room number. We want it to have the price of the room, and we want it to have guests in the room. We want the rooms to have types. We want to have maybe a single room, a double room, and a family room. And each of these room types should have different prices. For this hotel now, we want to have a method to check in, to check out, to be able to get the room number for the guest. We should be able to list all the rooms. We should be able to list only empty rooms. We should be able to search for guests by their names and their age, and we should be able to put the limit of the number of guests for each room, right? So let's say the limit we want to put is for single room should be 1 person maximum. For double room we want to have 2, and let's say for family room we want to have 4 max. So we create this hotel class that only has the name as a parameter. We define another attribute here, rooms, and pass an empty list to it. Now we want to create some instance method. Let's just create add room, and the first parameter is always self, and when we add room we want to add the room that we're adding here. So we say self dot rooms. So what we want to do now is to append this room here, right? We want to append to this empty list. So that's why we did not pass it as an argument. We want to append. When this room is added, we want it appended to the rooms that the hotel has. So self.rooms.append, so we're appending room. So now we can see we're using the methods that we learned for a list. So we made this an empty list and we append to the list. Then we want to have a method for check-in. So let's say def check-in, and for this check-in we want to, let's say the first parameter is always self. Let's say we want to have the guest that is checking in and the room number. So there are different ways you can do this. We just want to demonstrate an app that uses inheritance. So the room number, and we want to loop through the rooms. So let's say for room in self.rooms, we want to say if the room.room number is equal to room number, we want to do something. We want to add the guest to the room. So we will return room.add guest. So we're going to add the guest to the room. So we'll say room.add guest. Now this add guest method is a method we are going to define later, maybe in the room class. But let's do it first and then I will explain back. And at the end of it we want to return this in the for. So we return. So what we are doing here is if the room is in the rooms, we want to add guests to the room. If not, we want to return a message that says that the room number is not found. So now let's do one for checkout. So it has self, so we want to see the room number that the guest is checking out for. So we'll say room number. So it's almost going to be similar with this. Let's copy this. We're going to have a new method. So we have a method add guest that we're going to create. and remove guest. So before we did this, maybe we would have created the hotel class first. Let me do this first, and then we go to the top and create the hotel class. I'm trying to think about a method that will add the guest here. So let's come above here and let's create another class first before we do this. Let's start with the guest class, because we are going to be talking about the guests and the rooms in the hotel. So we'll create the guest class. So class guest. So we'll do def init. Self is always the first. So the guest will have a name. We said we want the age, and let's say we want their passport number, like that. So we'll have self.name is equal to name, self.age is equal to age, and then we have self.passport number is equal to passport number. Now let's just do something to debug. Let's use this, what we learned in the last lesson. Let's get the string representation here, self, and let's return guest. We want to return the name of the guest, which is equal to self.name, and it's just for debugging. Okay, so we do this for the guest class. So this class is short. It's just the class that collects all of the information about the guest. So now let's create a class for the rooms. So class room. So because you see in the hotel we're making reference to guest and room, so I want to create them first, then we'll come back to create the hotel. Now for the room here, we'll define the init, and we'll start with self, and we want to have the room number, we want to have the, let's say, price per night, and we want to have the capacity. Now all of this will define that, but you know the room will have guests, and we don't want the guests to be part of the parameters that we'll supply. We want it to be a list that we'll append to later on. So let's say self dot room number is equal to room number self price per night. All right, now we want to have for the guest self dot guest is equal to, we just have an empty list, so all the guests that will be in this room will be appended to this list. So let's create the method that will add guests to the room. So let's say def add guest. So depending on your requirements for the app you are building, you are going to create methods that handles different things. So we want to add the guest here. So for this guest, let's say we want to check the length of the number of people in the room already. So we want to check the length of the guests in the room already. So we'll say if self, or let's say if the length the guest, because now we have guests here in the room, so we want to check if the length or if the number of items in this list is less than the capacity, because each room we said is going to have a capacity. So if the number of people already in this list is less than the capacity, so we're adding this check to make sure that no room is overbooked without the person knowing that the room is full. So we say self guest dot append. So if so we're appending the guest. So if the capacity is not to the maximum capacity, you append a guest to that room. But if it is, you want to give a message that it is filled to capacity. So once it's appends, you want to return a success message. So let's say return. So return the name of the guest. So say guest.name added to room self.number. Okay. So the name of this guest from the guest, the name of the guest is added to the room number. So we're going to do this because now we're going to be calling this add guest from within a different method. So let's remove guest self. So we'll just use self. For the remove guest method, what we want to do is to just empty the room. So we'll just say self.guest, right? So this list is going to be empty. Self.guest is equal to, so we'll just assign an empty list instead of popping, right? We'll just assign an empty list for that room. Then let's see if let's say the receptionist wants to check if the room is available. Let's create a method for that. Def is available, and we just pass in self, and what we want this to do is to check the length of the number of people in the room, right? So we want to just return the length. There's a different way to do this. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible of guests. So you want to say true if it's available. So we want to use a boolean like this to say check if the length is equal to 0, then it's available. All right, so it will return true if it's available. Let's use the string representation here just for debugging, and let's return self dot get the class name. So the meta classes, you want to research and see them. Let me get the price. Alright, so we have the room class that we've created. we created different methods in the room. The method to add the guest to the room, to remove the guest from the room, to check if the room is available, and also a method to check the room number, the price per night, and to see the guests. So now we have created rooms, but we want to create the type of rooms. Let's create another class, and this is going to be a class for each type of room. So let's say we want to have single rooms, so we'll have single room. This is where inheritance comes in. Now we want to inherit the properties from the room class. What we do in Python is just in the pair of parentheses put the name of the parent class, which is room. What we want to get from here is just the room number, the price per night, the capacity. We want to get all of these attributes here from this. And what do we do in Python when we have inheritance like this? We call, let's use def init, we use self, and now we want room number. But we want to inherit all of the definitions of the attributes from the parent class room. So we use super here to get everything. So say super dot init. So we're getting the parent class, this super calls the parent class, and we're getting the init method, and we're getting the definition of the room number, the price per night. So now we want to set the price per night for the single room. Let's say it is 100. We want to set it for 100, and we want to set the capacity to say single room capacity is 1. So you see how we define the class single room. We define these two. When we want single room, we want it to inherit from the room all of this property, and we set a default value for the price per night here. We do the same thing for the double room. The class double room is going to still inherit from the room class, and we want to do the same thing we did here, just set the capacity and the price per night. So we have room number, price per night. Let's say the price per night here is 180, the capacity is 2, and then let's do a class for family room. So you see how I use camel case when I'm writing two words, right? So the class family room, provide room, and then I want to define the same thing here, and I want to just set the price per night to be, let's say 250, and the capacity is 4 max, right? So we've done this. Now we can go back to our hotel class, because now we've defined all of those methods that I want to use from these places. So in the hotel class, we defined the checkout here, and we want to use the remove, we add guests, and then when we want to check out, we remove guests, right? So let's come here. So say if room number, return add guest. So we're using the add guest here, and then we want to remove for checkout, we want to say return room dot, we want to remove guest. We don't need to supply anything, just remove the guest, and then we want to return, we'll remove the guest before we return. So we say room dot remove guest, and then I think we'll return here. So we return room, the room number is now, and if not, we want to say room number is not found. So this is how we check out, like this. All right, if we want to get the details of the guest, so let's create dev get guest, and here let's say self. I'm trying to make this like as realistic as real life as possible, so that as you end this course, you begin to imagine the possibilities of what you've learned. So you can see we're using the formats, the return, everything that we have learned so far in these classes that we are creating. So we want to create this method. We want to get the guest. When we request that we want to get a guest, we want to say for room, we want to loop through the room. So let's say for room in self.room, we want to do something. So for room in self.rooms, I think here, let's see def guest self room number. So for room in self.rooms, we want to do something. We want to say if the room dot room number is equal to the room number specified. So we are looping through all of the rooms, and to see if the room number that is specified matches a room there, we want to return the guest in that room. So say return room dot guest. But if not, we want to return back to the calling program, room number not found, or guest not in the room, whatever the message is. So we're just doing something skeletal for now. Okay, we can stop here, or we can let's add more functionalities that will help you understand this. Let's say we want to get all the rooms. Let's say def get rooms. We want to also get available rooms into self, and what we want to do here is to return all of the rooms if the room is available. Now remember that we created is available here, so we want to return everyone that returns true. All right, and so we'll come here to say return room 4. Now remember we did this comprehension. That's what I'm doing here. Now we want to create another method to maybe want to search for the guest. Maybe want to search guest. So let's say we want to get guest by age. So we have self, we have age. If you want to pass in the date of birth here to get by age, you can do that. So we did that in the last lesson when we looked at the datetime module to format this. But make it this easy so we can get done with it. Let's create a list where we store the results. So say result is equal to, and we want to loop through the rooms and we want to append to these results. So we say for, so we use a nested loop. So for room in self.rooms, we want to look for the guests in the room. So we say for guests in room dot guest, we want to now do something if the age of the guest. So we are searching by age. So if guest.age is equal to age, so we are looping through all the guests in all the rooms, and we are saying if the guest is equal to the age that is searched, we want to append to this result here that guest name, and then to give the list of all of the guests on the interface, and then this will return at the end of the day. We want it to return the result. So it will now return every guest who is the age that was searched. Let's search the guest by name. Let's do this as the last. Let's say the get guest by name, and then we return results. So this is all we want to do. So we have created several classes. We have the guest class, is a blueprint for creating a guest. We have the room, which is a blueprint for creating a room. We now decide to create child classes for the room class, which inherits the properties and methods from the room, and we do inheritance by specifying the name of the parent class in the parentheses of the class definition for the class that inherits it. So put a pair of parentheses and then the name of the parent class. So we did that for all the different types of rooms since they are inheriting from the room class. So it's the same example I gave in the last lesson where you have a car, then you have different types of car, electric vehicle or different types, and they will inherit from the car. So the same way, so you inherit from the room. And when you want to use the properties or the method, you use super there, and we want to define all of the properties here and give this the value, the capacity and the price per night. We'll give the value for each of the room. Okay, because we defined them here already, so we just define it here. Then we have a hotel class now that uses all the methods we defined from here to check people who in the hotel class will have the add room method. All right, so in a hotel, when you want to add new rooms, let's say they're expanding, they can use this method from the hotel class. Then to check into the hotel, the check-in method is there, check out, get guests, get rooms, and all that. So these functions that are general to the hotel, we put them as method in the hotel class. Let's test this to see if it actually works, if we can make sense of it. But this gives you an idea and gets you thinking about how you create your software in object-oriented way. So if name is equal to main, we want to define a hotel. Let's call the name of the hotel because the hotel class has the name definition. So let's define the hotel. So let's say my hotel is equal to, we call the class, so we're creating an instance of the class, and this hotel is called, let's call it Grand Python Hotel. Let's add rooms and print. Let's create objects for the rooms. Let's call this add rooms. We want to say my hotel, so that's the name of the hotel. I've created an hotel object. So this hotel object is the hotel I want to add rooms to. So I'm defining the rooms. So in the event you have like an admin dashboard where you have, maybe they're using the hotel management app, and then they have to configure their system. So these are all the configuration here where you define the hotel name. You want to add rooms, so maybe your rooms have number or names. So the room you want to add, what type of room is it? So the child class for it. So we want to add room, let's say add room, and so we're calling the add room method that the hotel class has here. So we want to add the room type. Now we'll call the class for single room, and now this single room that we've called, we want to give it a room number, because when you see the definition of the single room here, it's only room number that we pass in here. All the rest are set at default value, so we don't need to set a new value for it. So we'll say dot add room. Let's call this room 101. Right, let's add double room and let's add family room. Let's add guests. We want to have guest 1. We're going to instantiate the class guest, and the guest has the name, age, and passport number. So we're adding guest now. So we want to have the name, let's say Alice, the age of Alice, we'll say 28, and let's give Alice a passport number P12345. Let's do that for guest 2. Let's add like 5 guests so we can have enough example. So we created 5 guests. Let's do check-ins. Let's just test with check-ins. So now we've created a hotel object, added rooms to the hotel, we've added guests, also different names of guests. Now it is time for us to check if this works. So let's do check-ins. So let's print my hotel. So in this hotel, we want to call the check-in method, and we want to check in guest 1, let's say G1. We want to check in G1 to a room. We want to check in G1 to, let's say, the single room. Let's put 101 to room 101. Then let's try to check in another person to the same room 101. The maximum capacity is 1 person. Let's print this out and see if it works. So we have single room object has no attribute guests. Where is the add guest method? So what we have here is guests S. So this is where the problem is, guests. So when I clear here and I run, we have it working properly. So you see the trail of error starts from bottom to top to where the problematic error is, the last one, which is line 20. So because I did not put the name of the attribute correctly here, I put it as singular. Let's recreate the error. We have that error here, and so we see 20 57 114. So you start from what the first is, which is 20, and when we come to 20, we know that this is where the error is. It's supposed to be guests. And when I run this, we have Alice added to room 101, and the second one return none because room 101 is full to capacity. If we want to add this person to room 102, it should go through a second time. So let me clear here and I'll run, and Bob added to room 102. If I want to add a third person to 102, 102 has a capacity of 2. Let's see if we check in G3 to 102, and Charlie added to 102. But when we want to add a third person to 102, we should get an error because the maximum capacity for that room is 2, and we'll return none for the third time. Alright, so we can return a better message. I'm just trying to show you all of this. So we can actually look at different status, like let's look at the other method we create to show all available rooms. So let's do print all rooms. Let's say my hotel dot get rooms is the method we created. So I want to get rooms. So this will print all available rooms. I'm going to comment this out, and then we want to print available rooms now. And then let's check the last one, get the names of the guests in room 102. I think I will uncomment this so we can have this guest in room 102. In room 102, and it'll be my hotel dot, we have get guest. I want to get the guest in 102. Did I create that method, get guest? I have get guest. So now let's clear here and let's run. So we added guests 3 and 4 to room 102. We want to get all rooms. Single room, we have 101, the price is 100, 0 over 1 guest here. Double room, 102, price 180, 2 guests are in this room already. So we want to get the available rooms. We have the single room, doesn't have no guests in it. We have the family room is available, but we're not getting the double room that is filled to capacity. Okay, so this is just for debugging to get a clear message like that. And so we want to get the details of the guests in room 102. It tells me the name is Charlie, the age is 35, passport number this, the guest 2. We get everything out. So when you create this for production, you're going to change what you are printing or the message you want displayed in the front end. So this is where we end this lesson. Thank you.